Hello, everyone. I am Bob Lingle of Off the Beaten Path Bookstore in Lakewood, New York, and this is the Weaponized Literacy Podcast. Over the past year, I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to speak with investigative reporters, social activists, astrophysicists, philosophers, military veterans, and just plain old writers. We discuss life, death, and all of the things that happen in between. Our goal is to use the power of the written word to create a better understanding of the world around us and the people that live in it. We do this by reading with purpose, and we invite you to join in our effort to weaponize literacy. Hello, everyone. Our guest tonight heads the Toufah Foundation in support of survivors of sexual assault in the Gambia. She has spoken before the United Nations as part of a Young People's Forum on Human Rights, presented at the International Criminal Court at The Hague, and testified at the Gambia's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She lives in Toronto, where she is studying to become a sexual assault victim advocate. Ladies and gentlemen, Toufah Jallow. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
I wanted to thank you, obviously, for joining us, your co-author, Kim Pidoway, for her contributions to the book, Anthony at Steerforth Press, for lining up you and a number of great authors throughout this year, and everyone else joining us. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, you can use the comment feature and any of those if you have any questions or comments to add in during the event, and we'll try to incorporate those into the discussion. Want to add in a trigger warning for the discussion. If you've been paying attention to the promotion for the event, you'll know that this is a discussion about sexual assault and rape. And if that is going to be a troubling topic for you, you may not want to watch. But I did want to take a quote from the book when you were testifying in front of the commission. It's time that we are uncomfortable because comfort has been disastrous. We've had a lot of tough talks this year where we've dealt with the topic of death in general, suicide, opioid addiction, and I think it's important to have discussions about difficult things. Thanking you for sharing your story and discussing your story with us.
Anytime.
So just to give us an overview of where your book that came out yesterday is coming from, can you kind of run us through a timeline from the pageant that you entered into to you escaping the Gambia?
Right. Thank you for that trigger warning. It's really important, especially for survivors who are watching. So I just first want to say that we see you, and your thoughts and feelings are very valid. I mean, the book really digs deeper into who I am, which is what I wanted to share with the world. But my experiences as to how I got to where I am today. Did not start with me joining a pageant, but I get to meet my perpetrator through that. And I had finished high school and I was going to the college, and there was an opportunity. It's a nationally sponsored beauty pageant, and I competed. I take you through the story and all the things that happened beforehand. The girls that I met who told me they wanted me to represent the college. I represented nationwide, and I won as the Miss July 22nd winner, which came with a prize of being able to pick any university you wanted in the world and study, and the government would pay for it throughout. Exciting for any young West African girl who was really in tune with the idea of going to school, because I saw how it helped my mother and other women around me. But unfortunately, I did meet the then dictator of my country, who ruled over decades in a small West African country called the Gambia. a man who was brutal in nature, killed and murdered, and a lot of people disappeared if you had ever gone against him or say anything contrary to his beliefs. um, a lot of other gifts were given, suggestions were made. I was offered a job and then a marriage proposal, but then a powerful man who couldn't accept my no's decided to rape me. I found myself in a situation where I couldn't share this, considering the political climate at the time, but also the sociocultural boundaries that just makes it difficult to talk about sexual violence, regardless who the perpetrator was, whether it was the president or your uncle or a school teacher. It was just a difficult conversation to have overall. I did not know where to start or how to say it. I didn't have no role models or blueprint as to how you do that. So at 18 years old, 19, I found my way to the neighboring country as a fugitive. This means running for my life and veiling up and covering and using boats and cattle fields, cars to cross over to Senegal, which is our neighboring country. And therein, I had to make some calls, some very tough ones. Some were intuitive, some were naive. By the end of the day, they did work out. And I met some heads of police and then security officers, met a lot of human rights organizations. And then I was a refugee in Canada, where I had to navigate life in a country that I only picked out from a map that was put in front of me. And I was told that it is diverse and I can get a job. I'm like, yep, Toronto it is. And here we are 5 years later, 4 years actually, because in 2019, after the dictator has been deposed in exile now in Equatorial Guinea, I decided to come clean about my story, and to tell the world why I ran away, but also, interestingly, to tell my own family and my mother why I ran away when I did. So in a nutshell, that is where or the things that led up to me being a victim of sexual assault.
Thank you for sharing that with us. As much as your goals and ambitions now and what your book is about in terms of advocating for victims of sexual assaults, and even I would say trying to put in preventative measures to prevent future assault. A good chunk of your book is a refugee story, I felt like it really personalized the struggles that refugees have, where you had referenced Syrian refugees that
The shelter.
that had gone through that, but to identify one person and follow your story, it really shed a light on a lot of things of just people that are coming into countries and feel invisible is the word that you used frequently. Can you talk about some of your struggle and going through that process?
Yeah, I mean, it was really important, and I really wanted to have it as a part of the story, not just to end at where I'd escaped and now I'm in Toronto, but what that was like. Because realistically, I think when we often talk about refugees, whether it's in the media or just generally, we lump everyone in one box. It's like being a refugee is one thing from a specific location, and there's these things that have to happen to you in order for you to fit that mold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to share my experiences and also how I felt about the people that were around me. And I was trying to talk about the small things, the ones that probably a policymaker will not think about, one that will not come up when everybody sitting at the table have not experienced what it's like to be one. And all the diverse groups of people that meet and identify as refugee. And also sometimes the people we don't think are refugees or assume they would be, once they call themselves refugees, we are a bit taken aback, like, okay, but you do not fit the description of a refugee, because of many reasons we have created our own versions of what refugees look like. So it was important to talk about not being able to navigate one's geographic location, right? And what that does to your self-esteem and to your mental health. The very idea of sitting in the midst of other refugees, but not also identify with them because your stories are so different. To be told, here is a phone line, you can make a call to your family, but the phone line only calls numbers that are in Toronto, and your family is thousands of miles away. And in order to call them, you need money to buy a card or something. But the shelter or these institutions can say, oh, they have free television and they have free phones. And when you go to the television and you put it on, what language is being spoken? And 90% of the refugees that are in that shelter do not understand what is being said, but we just get to tick the box, that we provided that and we did that, because there's not been like an in-depth look into what different refugees needs at different times. And even for me, that found myself in that situation, because we've all been programmed to think what a refugee looks like. Once you find yourself in a refugee place, you're doing this whole thing where you're questioning your own identity. You're like, I'm not supposed to be here. And it's so difficult to receive help at times because you think to yourself, you do not fit the description of a refugee. And these are conversations that we have to be open about. And I wanted to share those small stories. I wanted to share what it was like, because I knew where I came from or the home that I did, but I also saw families and kids and other people that had stories, common stories to share. And I felt outside of that, because I'm like, oh, what do I say in this situation? When someone is telling me, oh my God, I need to get to my family because, my family was blown up or our school was just blown up and I'm the only survivor. I don't know if the others lived. And they turn to me and say, how about you? Why are you here? And that very awkward position to think, what do I say? Oh, I was raped by the president of my country when I was 18 years old, and that's why I ran here. That's why I'm here with all of you, and having to hide that. So even in a place that was supposed to feel like refuge and healing and getting to know myself and find myself, I was hiding more secrets. So my secrets kept piling up because of the very nature of where I found myself.
And there's a quote that I pulled from the book. The couple that you had stayed with that normally take in Syrian refugees, and they were like, "Oh, you didn't come from Syria," and you told them the absence of war doesn't necessarily equal peace.
Right. That was a desperate one, and I think I remember I must have read that quote somewhere or come across it because it is said in many different variations. But I, I was trying to protect my story, but also still show them that I do fit the refugee, the refugee description that you're looking for. Please take me in. That was the idea.
And just in addition to everything that you were dealing with, to be in that position and kind of slip into the depression because of everything you're going through, you had this struggle of feeling like an ungrateful refugee. And I feel like that is something important to highlight, because there's so much angst and more anger towards refugees that are coming in, like, oh, they're coming in, they're going to use up all of our resources. A select group of people will think that, not myself. So then when you have that mindset from a certain group of people, and to add on top of that, I'm not even comfortable in this country.
Right.
To
Yeah. Like I'm here and I didn't choose to. I really didn't, and couldn't even make best use of some of the resources that might be available.
Mhm.
Because you had like English lessons here and there, and some of those services that I couldn't use because I didn't really need them. And I was grateful for all that even the shelter, even laying on a bunker over someone else, because at least the country did take me in. But in my gratefulness also was a sense of I'm not fitting in, And to me at the time was like, and sometimes what people fail to realize is that a lot of refugees do want to fit in, right? They do want to belong, but they also want to do that in a way where they're not losing who they are. Because when they do, you cannot get the best of them, right? You cannot Canadianize someone that hasn't have an identity to stand on. There has to be a foundation of who one is, what one wants, and what one is familiar with. And there has to be an integration somewhere of these two identities. And some of them, you get to a point where you kind of just hold to your corner and stay back because you feel like you are less of where you come from and less of the Canadian as well. So you're stuck in between, right?
Mhm.
Or you stay away from, forcing some things or integrating in a way because you feel not too smart. And this is coming from someone who at least understood English, who could speak English. And even with that, I sat at the back of the classroom. I shrug myself. So it is not always about the sociocultural perspectives of the person, but also it's like you don't know what people's stories are. And just because I spoke English very well didn't make my integration any more or less difficult. So it's a lot of different ways to look at it, and there's a lot of patience that is needed, but also just a bit more clear explaining of things. When I said, or when I was talking about how frustrating it was to go through the subway and say, how do I get to, let's say, Humber a college, and someone says, oh, go up north. That comes with the assumption that I know where up north is or down south is. Those little details where you stand there feeling so stupid whilst everything walks past you, in this very fast speed life, and you're so lost because the person who's telling you up north just says up north and walks away, and you notice the other people are looking at you and you don't want to look stupid. You have this whole thing that we all have, which is your ego, and you just go and sit in a bus and be like, you know what, I'll wait till I get to another environment and then ask again because I don't want to look like that refugee,
Yeah.
right? So it's difficult to navigate, but also very interesting.
Um, Wanted to get into some of the contrasts and some of the similarities between. There's obviously going to be some extreme differences between life in America, be it Canada or the United States, and life in Gambia, but there are some similarities that you had the is it Fula? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Fula.
Fula.
Right.
The Fula saying of a man is never too ugly if he has money in his pocket. A
Right.
woman is never complete until she is a wife.
Yeah.
I feel like we're pretty much there. It was certainly more true in 1950s America,
Right, right,
but
right.
we're not that far removed from that. And you had also gotten into the Muslim school that you had gone to that taught that women's bodies were sources of sin. And I wrote in the book next to that, there's just a comparison of there's no male responsibility in these situations. And where American schools, women have a bit more freedom in the way they dress. I can recall growing up, like in middle school, junior high, there was teachers that would go around like hall monitors, and if a girl had a tank top on, it was a spaghetti strap tank top, they would make her throw like a dirty gym shirt on if that was all that they had to wear, because they were a distraction.
Right.
So there are obvious differences, but there's definitely similarities in things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I think they're all rooted in the same principles, and it's a question of whether one society have gotten to a place where they kind of water down the sentence. So when you move away from um, um, women's bodies are a source of sin to something like boys will be boys, right?
Mhm.
or let's get it straight. Women and men they have huge differences, and then not only stop there but go ahead to say they're stronger, wiser, and all these other things that will come up. And it's you have one society that have being a little bit more, let's say, less straightforward with the misogyny and patriarchy and the things that they say. And you have one society who hasn't even realized that there's something wrong with what is being said.
Hmm.
But they're all rooted in the same principle. And for me, whether it's in Canada, and that's the beauty of it, living here and in the Gambia, it's like I get to experience how all these different things unfold in a way. When I walked into some sort of party in Canada, and then I'm just trying not to talk to someone because I'm busy, and a guy just comes and say, "Is that friend dumb or deaf? Like, is she scared of people?"
Hmm.
And then I find myself too in Gambia where someone is trying to get close and take a picture, and I say no, and they're saying, "Oh, why? You think you're better than everyone?" It's everywhere and it's all around us. And that is the interesting thing to watch, is you cannot run away from it. And that is why for me it was important in the book also to just find this bridge and intersection between feminisms, whether it is that which I experienced also my mother and my grandmother lived through, or if it is the ones that I saw here and read and experience by myself. But it's the same things. It's, even in the United States, you have a lot of powerful men who have been accused of sexual assault, and a lot of attention on most of the cases we've had about, or the media cares about, is because it involved powerful men, right? There's a lot of younger girls, women, and boys all around that country that are experiencing similar things, but no one is really, putting it out there. That's why the Me Too movement was so important, because visibility around a more powerful story was used to bring more visibility to other stories that we often don't care about. And when the women speak against powerful people all around the world, whether it's in North America, whether it's in Africa or Gambia, the women are not believed and they're doubted and they're scrutinized. It's the same thing. Media is being used to bully them. Caricatures are made, jokes are thrown here and there. And then the person who did it, the powerful person, all of a sudden is loved even way more than they were. And it gets to a place where when they're talking about their crimes or the things they've done wrong, it filters down to a point where you don't hear sexual assault anymore. Jammeh, although he's in exile and has left, you have his supporters supporting him. And even after we had the Truth Commission and all of his heinous crimes get brought to light, people are marching with banners that say Jammeh back to the state house, or the party back to the state house. And when media, serious media, is talking about him now, they will talk about all of the crimes and forget all the women and that have been abused. Same thing in the United States, right? Not to get any political, but you can have someone like Trump right now where people will advocate for him to come back to the office. And when we now talk about all the things he's done wrong, the women who came forward and their stories have taken the back seat. So we are really all doing the same thing, just at a more modern, a less more
Yeah.
straightforward way than others will do, like in the Gambia.
And one point that you make in your book is the use of the word allegedly.
Right.
I think in America, it's more commonly used for anything just because we're very happy with lawsuits and such. So it's important that they use that word in every context. But in the specific stance of Gemma, there was the whole list of crimes. And oh, are you still there? I think we might have lost her. Well, we wait for her to come back. There is a whole list of crimes that Gemma is accused of the former president of the Gambia, and for all of the crimes except for welcome back.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. For all of the crimes that the former president was accused of, it was just that's what he did. But when it came to anything to do with sexual assault, it was alleged sexual assault.
Right.
That was a distinct difference between those two.
Right. Oh no, I mean always. It's the word allegedly, and I wasn't very aware of it until I came forward in 2019, and it kept popping everywhere. So I had to dedicate my prologue, the prologue of the book, to that word, because it is really interesting. And even in the very, as you said, clear instances where the crimes are being listed. Let's say, for instance, in the Gambia, Jammeh had claimed he could cure HIV and AIDS and cancer using herbal treatment, right? And this went on, and a lot of people suffered, throughout these treatment programs. And the world watched as this drama unfolded, and you know that went on. But when that is being referred to, in whether it's official documents or legal documents, it says that he did say he could cure cancer. He did try to cure cancer, and he was hunting witches around the villages. Not allegedly is used for even things like that,
Mhm.
because yeah, we all know that happened. But you have that immediately after that. You have, oh, and allegedly raped so and so, because we have still not gotten to a place where we have even accepted sexual assault happens at those higher places. It's difficult. It's like we're almost wired to say that. Me, as a sexual violence survivor, found myself editing when I write, editing when I say, talk about sexual assault, whether it's of myself and others. I found myself using allegedly, although I was in the room. But it happened to me. But it is, and I know we hide behind, oh, it's for legal issues and it's for just to be on the safe side. Even when I write an article now and I send it to major news outlets, because my claims are very straightforward, I'm not putting allegedly. I leave that to them, and that's what I
Mhm.
also said in the prologue. I leave that to you. That is not, don't push it on survivors to accept your allegedlys, because we were there in the streets, in the dorm rooms, in whatever room it was, on the subway, in the alleyways, anywhere it was that it happened to us. We were there. Allegedly is not for us to accept or take. It is not our lingo, and it shouldn't be. But it takes a conscious effort to get to a place where we can say, hey, you stole my ice cream, and not, hey, you stole my ice cream, but also I think you allegedly assaulted me. Yeah.
Um, your book really illustrates how hard it is to communicate truth, especially painful truth. And I think it's important to get into it because, especially with the Me Too movement, with Brett Kavanaugh and everything, people are, oh, why would she wait 20 years? Why would she wait 30 years? Um, I just want to, I was thinking about this throughout the day and then want to tie it into a situation I had this morning,
Yeah.
um, to illustrate, especially for somebody who is non confrontational, to deal with a situation as small as what I had to deal with this morning. Yesterday, our mail wasn't delivered, and realized it was because there was this large construction vehicle parked in front of our mailbox.
Mhm.
Today, I saw that the construction vehicle was still parked in front of our mailbox, Mike. And I saw the construction worker there. It took me about an hour to work up the nerve of like, how am I going to handle the situation of just dealing with what turned into a non-issue because he was leaving in 10 minutes anyways, but just going up and addressing a truth that made me uncomfortable. And I felt like I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. That was such a small issue
Right.
to, and that was an hour of my life this morning.
Yeah.
So if you put the stakes of what accusing somebody or telling the truth about a situation of this person raped me and all of the things that can be stacked on top of that, 20 years seems like a pretty reasonable amount of time for to deal with that. um, I want to get into how, because it was a few years. Obviously, it was the pressure that he was still in office,
Yeah.
not feeling comfortable. But the things that you went through to get you ready for that, in terms of counseling, and then even like the boxing that you got
Mhm.
into.
Yeah. I mean, that whole excuse of why did you wait for so long is so, it's it's really coming from people that would ask other questions if you had come out the day that it happened, right? It would just be
Mhm.
something else. It's just the very questions that keeps changing depending on what it is that they can latch onto. And then I always say this, I wonder why we never think about the many people that never spoke until the day they died. You're wondering, oh, 20 years you spoke about this, and then forgetting there are people that lived 60, 30 or so years, and they're in their graves with that secret and never mentioned it. That's a longer year, right? That's a combination of many years, but we never really think about it because somehow there's this illusion that there's only as much sexual assault out there as much as it is being talked about, right? So I am probably sexually assaulted or allegedly assaulted because I talked about it. If I didn't talk about it, it means automatically it didn't happen. So we're calculating the number of people we know that are being
Mhm.
assaulted based on the ones that come forward, which is crazy to me. And I had this experience in the Gambia where I asked a room full of men and women, and other people have done this as well. And this is also a culture where just conversations around sex is just taboo. And when you ask people when was the last time you had a sexual encounter, or how many people have you slept with, there's a lot. It gets very awkward, and these are willing participants in what we're asking them. And some will choose not to answer. Some will feel like you're invading their privacy, and some will scratch their head, and others will giggle about it, like when we are teenagers or younger kids in school and learning about sex education. They find it difficult to talk about. And even when they have great sexual encounters, I mean, apart from probably their close friends, they don't just walk around telling people, hey, guess what? So if that is the situation on that end, I don't know what makes you think that rape is something you experience. And the minute you walk away from it, you want to hold a microphone. What people fail to understand is that victims of assault are trying to process what just happened, right?
Mhm.
When most of us are also trying to deny what has happened. The whole idea of doubting survivors or disbelieving them starts with us. We have done all of that to ourselves before we get to a place of accepting what had happened to us. So, yeah, and I tell a lot of people, take as many years as you want. Take 30, 40, 50, because I don't understand how a society that bullies, that threatens and puts women's lives on the line when they come forward and speak, also make it seem like it is so easy to. You don't need no gear, no preparation, no self healing to do before you can speak up. It takes a lot to be the one on the front line to expose your body to people, because that's what you do when you explain your assault, right? A lot
Mhm.
of us feel naked. A lot of us feel like we are telling you what our body looks and feels or looked like during the time of our assault. For some of us, that have to be more detailed. And when you go through the legal system, it's even worse. You're putting your entirety on the table, all of you and all that you come with. So to have a broken person or ask someone that hasn't gone through the process of healing to do that, because somehow if they do it earlier you would believe them. No, if they came out and tell you I was assaulted yesterday, you ask them. If you couldn't ask them why it took them so long, you would ask them what they were wearing. If you didn't, you ask them why they went there. If that wasn't it, you will ask them why they drank alcohol. If that's not it, it will be something else. So there's always going to be a question from someone who's finding it difficult to accept that a woman has the audacity to say, I have been assaulted, because it's supposed to be taboo and secret and huge,
Mhm.
right? So for me, it took a lot of work. And again, I never thought I would speak of my assault, for those many years. All I wanted was to leave and forget it and become the biggest secret keeper for my perpetrator.
Mhm.
No problem. I was willing to do that for both of us. And the most I wanted was to be able to see my mother and my siblings, to be able to go back to my country and eat the food I am so familiar with. That would have done it for me. That's what I thought.
Mhm.
But it didn't. I just could not move forward. And when I was healing and receiving this help, and I could feel that I was getting stronger in my person, and my ability to live with this and accept that this has happened to me, it made me question, what do younger, older people do in the Gambia when they're assaulted by closer relatives or people who are funding their livelihood? What do they do? Have I ever seen a therapist in the Gambia? Have I ever heard someone talk about it? It's questions like this that led me to digging in, to Googling and searching visible or upfront Gambian survivor, nothing, just numbers from the United Nations. And I so vividly explained this in the book when I sat in front of that computer, and I put all the different combinations I could, and I could not find a phase. And it made me question, does that mean I am the only one? And it made me realize that's what every other person who is jumping on the internet, because we are in the age of internet, trying to find some source of help or representation or community, there's nothing, just zero. And that is what inspired the first kick that inspired me to even think that I will ever speak about what has happened to me. So sometimes it's thought about for a while, sometimes it's prompt, sometimes we literally speak up because our lives depend on it.
I want to segue into the work that you're doing, but I first wanted to. There's been some new people that have joined in, and if you have any questions or any comments that you wanted to add into the conversation, use the comment feature on whatever platform you're using, and we'll try to incorporate those in. Before we get into your work with the Toufah Foundation, I did want to. We always end up talking about the writing process in a lot of these author talks. What was it like to work with Kim Pidoway as co-writing and working through this story with another person?
No, it was awesome. It was almost like a trial at what it will sound like when I totally open myself up to be vulnerable and in depth, and to have someone that I can think with, and to have someone watch me go through my thinking process. And because there's a lot of revelations that happen in writing in this book, and a lot of private and personal conversations that I had to have with my mother that I would have probably never had if I did not write this book. And to have someone there who's coming from a completely different cultural background, be able to step into my shoes made me believe that there is a possibility for people to see my world through my lenses, if she can. And she was just, I mean, she's amazing. Her ability to think with me, because it's not just the writing process. Is I talk and I'm like, and I have long pauses, and she had these very, intentional and diverse thoughts that just expanded my own thinking, and we will go on at it and on at it. From the very first day I met her, I just knew, because I was just trying to figure out someone I could work with, and she felt right, and she is very helpful beyond the book and everything around the book. We have become great friends. She's somebody I can call and kiki about stuff, or just say, hey, I have this event coming up and I am very, very anxious about it. And we'll chat about it. So it was really great. And then I also never thought it was possible to capture my feelings, because somehow as humans we always think our feelings and our experiences are so unique to us. We must be the only one that understand this specific feeling. And to have it in a book where it had to take me communicating that, and then when I read it in a book that is exactly how I felt, it's amazing. It's so cool.
Just had a question pop in of how can we donate to Toufah for taking the time to do this wonderful interview? Well, you have a foundation that do you accept donations through the foundation? Is there a website we can direct them to?
We do have a website. We've never added a click on to donations. We've never had that or asked for it. We really run projects for women survivors. And so that takes community sensitization, it takes doing audiovisual content, but never had a donation. So I that would be something to walk on. But also I am trying to also separate the foundation from the book as much as I can. Not because there is no correlation, but because I do respect the women and the girls that I work with so much and their experiences. And although I capture some of those shared experiences in the book is my story and my experiences as well. Although a lot of them are excited to have the book as well. Yeah.
But I did want to get into the work that you're doing. You had referenced some of the videos and radio spots that you've done. I was interested in, can you tell us about the reverse role series that you've done of what men have?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, that was cool. It was a thought process between me and my colleague Marion Volkman Brando, who's a colleague and a friend. And there's a lot of talking, and sometimes in a society where when a woman opens her mouth, they're hardly listening to what you're saying from the very beginning because you are a woman. So the rest of what you say, it gets in here and it goes over there. So I'm like, how do we sow what we are talking about? Instead of talking about it, let's just show them what we are saying. And the reverse reality video it's named following the life of a typical Gambian woman. So you expect to see a woman doing the typical Gambian chores and what a day looks like in their life. But when you click on it, first you see a guy wake up in the morning and, does the cleaning and the cooking, gets the kid dressed and sends the kid to school. And whilst he's doing that, the lady comes in with just the bag because all she had to do was brush her teeth, grab a cup of coffee, and head out. And then the man is late for work, jumps in a taxi cab where the cab is filled with women because, it often is. The driver is a woman, which is not a thing in Gambia. You don't see women taxi drivers. So you have a woman who's the driver, you have three other people. And instead of having the man sit outside, they just pin him in between. They have their hands over him. Boundaries are not respected or recognized. He's feeling so uncomfortable and clinging onto his bag and dear life. And he makes it out. Oh, another day, thankfully. Finishes, goes to work. And whilst he's at work, bringing tea to the boss, who's a lady, the boss wants to touch him. He's like, oh, no, that can't happen. The boss is like, get out of here if you want to keep your job. Then he goes home, but before he gets home, he had to pick up the kid. He has to go to the groceries, grab some food to make, comes home, makes dinner. The wife comes back to the house and starts playing video games, throws the shoes over there. That's what happens. But we say that there's something probably wrong with that, but people are not getting it. And even for me, who was making the film, I was using he in place of she a lot because it didn't feel right to say, oh, she just came home and started playing music, video games. And then they go to, and with all this tiredness, he comes to the bed, wants to go to bed. This wife wants to have sex with him. And we ended with the guy looking into the camera like, so, and when people watch that, the idea is to say, what? People were confused. It was such a shock effect. It's like, okay, that's not right. And you could tell even in that moment, a lot of people in the comments and online could not get the message. And they were there saying, oh, this man is not man enough. A real man don't accept that. They couldn't even pick on the satire and the sarcasm of that film. But it's one of the stuff we do.
And has that been a nice, because initially, before your world was changed, your goal was to get into the performing arts. So has this been a nice little back end way to get into that?
Exactly. The creativity comes in there because I get to use, I think what I'm loving right now, we are making a huge documentary for the Canadian Fund for Local Initiatives in West Africa. And to direct and be behind those cameras, to capture the stories I feel like are important and to piece it together and then to edit find myself trying to understand this whole audio world and behind the camera, all of those things is such a beautiful way that it has added to my life, because I really do believe in storytelling. So that's where the book comes in, and that is where
Mhm.
all these videos also come in, because I know I found myself. I learned to speak English. I was inspired through books I didn't know where they came from, right? And all of those people were trying to tell a story. So it is important to tell stories, and it is important to tell stories from a survivor perspective. Often survivors are seen as just victims or survivors.
Mhm.
No, they can be experts too. I mean, if there's any expert in the field of sexual assault, it's the survivors themselves.
And that was you kind of helped me with the cover of the book, but I didn't know. Obviously, I didn't want to refer to you as a victim, but sometimes survivor like just has different connotations with it. Survivor is the term that you would prefer to use with this situation.
Sorry, I missed that.
Survivor, because there's victim,
Right, right,
survivor.
right.
Survivor is the phrase, the term that you would prefer to use um, going through this situation.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because it's all part of the process of accepting and owning up to what we are, and our journey. There's nothing wrong with the word victim at all. In order to get to survivorhood, you have to, be a victim or accept that one is. But I also think often we are so stuck with the title victim, a victim, that not accepting that we are survivors is taken away from the strength that we have. And for me, anyone who's still here with us and who has made it through in some form, whether they're visible or not visible, they are survivors. And there's so much power in calling oneself a survivor, right? And I like to use it and own it, because often we also just want to be in the back and be like, I'm not going to take that title because it's so much. And it's to say, no, you earned it. You earned it for still being here with us, and for existing with this trauma and this experience. So that's why I do love the word survivor. And foundation, all the pages of the foundation is called Home of Visible Survivors. I reference myself as a visible survivor, because it's important to just at least own that one thing, and dictate what that means for us.
Hmm. Um, there's no questions that came in, just a number of comments that I wanted to make sure that you saw.
Right.
uh, a former classmate of yours is proud of you and the courage and work that you've done. Um,
Yeah, I remember the name, Madun, and he would tell you that I was not coming to class every day because I didn't want to be at college.
Another comment was, I'm sure every survivor watching is proud of you for sharing your story. Um, and then Lynn says, thank you for your voice and sharing your time and story with us.
Thank you.
Um, if there is one or just a couple of things that you hope people take away from reading your book, what do you hope those things to be?
First, get the book. And when you do, I really do hope that you see a survivor from a wholesome perspective, because one of the reasons why I wrote it is that there was a lot of headlines. There's a lot of very short headlines and articles, and I felt like it didn't make me visible enough, in the sense that if there's a younger person that I wanted to inspire, looking at those headlines, getting to a place where they will speak so boldly about their experience will seem so far-fetched for them. They'll be like, oh, I need to make it to the New York Times. It's a lot. And, probably I need to be in Canada to be able to do that. And I wanted to make that level achievable and reachable. So I hope when you read the book that you do realize that we are all kind of the same. And some survivors like myself did have childhood experiences and loved the many things that we all do, had dreams and aspirations, and is a person from a home and a family and people that loves them. And they didn't choose to be survivors or victims. One day, just one day, they found themselves in this, and the way they decided to navigate it depicted or interpreted the rest of their lives. And I also hope that you meet my brother, who is so dear to me. And I hope you meet my mother, who is silent and resilient. And I hope you are just immersed in what Gambia feels and tastes and look like, and also to meet a people who have suffered a dictatorship for 20 something years, and the strength in the people that are fighting for justice now, what those growing up as a young person in a Muslim majority country looks like, and that it gives you another perspective of what a victim looks like, but also what a feminist looks like outside of the North American perspective. That there is a bridge, and that I refuse to be boxed. This idea that I am not African enough because I'm a feminist, and also I'm not feminist enough because I come from a home with over 20 siblings and in a polygamous home. That all of these truths can be held by us, and I am trying to navigate this, and that's why I think the last chapter of my book is called the last or the second to last, life in two halves, because that is really how I feel, and I belong wherever it is that I've earned to be in. So I hope you take all of that from the book. It's a lot in there.
Yes.
But I hope you like it.
I found it to be just very honest. There wasn't any sort of like trying to gloss over or sugarcoat or anything. You just laid it out there, and I appreciated everything that you had to say. And I loved that first portion of the book where you really get into your country and explaining how everything, like the differences, and I got a good sense of it, and I hope a lot of people pick up the book and hear your story. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we start to wrap up?
Nothing much. I guess just to say, when you do read the book, there are different characters in the book that I've come across to get to where I am, and we can all aspire to be one of those. And we all know or will encounter sexual violence survivors, and let's be kind to refugees, to sexual violence survivors, to minorities, to queer people, to people we do not understand, or to people that are not who we are. And it goes a long way, because you might be meeting the next Toufah at the subway, or at the border, or the immigration neighborhood, something. Just remember, they might write a book tomorrow, and you will be that person that made all the difference in their life. Other than that, let's get the book and get to reading it. Thank you so much for having me, Bob.
Thank you for participating and speaking with all of us. So another plug for the book, Toufah. We have the book in store. It is available on our website, obpbooks.com. If you're not from the area, you have an independent bookstore around you, go in, tell them to order the book if it's not already on their shelves. Let's get this into a lot of bookstores. Just a few plugs for upcoming events. October 27th, we're going to be talking to Melanie Moyer of the original Glitch. It's a dystopian future for millennials. Fun read. These Bones by Kayla Chenault is a historical gothic fiction that deals with poverty, racism. I said when we were talking to Toufah before we went live, I said that our upcoming events are going to be lighter in topics. This one's not so much, sorry. And then what will probably be our last event for the year is Dare to Know by James Kennedy. This one explores the idea of a future where you can know the exact moment that you're going to die. And it's from the salesman's perspective, who's trying to sell this product to people of knowing when their time is up. He does the experiment on himself, and he realizes that he should have died already. So it's dealing with the implications of that. It really it's a crazy premise. And then the novel it's a mind melter. So that'll be a fun conversation. He seems like an interesting guy. Thank you all for joining in the conversation tonight. I don't think I listed any of the dates for those books, but those are available. You can find those on our website. And thank you so much again, Toufah.
Thank you so much. See you around.
See you.
Bye.